Hi, my name is Charleston Singleton. I'm the artist in residence emeritus here at the wonderful Gilliard Center in Charleston, South Carolina. And welcome to another episode of Raising the Volume. Today, we have a legendary guest joining us on this wonderful stage. He is a native of Charleston. He is a wonderful musician. Uh, Community activist, community, just so many wonderful things. There's so many things that we're going to get into. So we welcome to Raising the Volume, Mr. Lonnie Hamilton III. Sir, thank you so much for being here. I've been waiting for a long time for this one, to be honest with you.
It's my pleasure.
Yeah, as many times as we have uh, talked, shared the bandstand,
Yeah.
which I'll get into as well. Um, it's always good to just sit down and pick your brain, and listen to you share a lot of the knowledge and things that you have done over your lifetime. Speaking of that, I've got to brag on Brother Hamilton. He is 93 years young, and if I could get a little bit of that fountain of youth that he has, I'll be all good. I'm telling you right now. I'll tell you right now. So now let's start at the beginning. What part of the Low Country are you from?
I was raised on Silver Hill. That's a little north of Mount Pleasant Street on King Street. It's just before the city limits
Hmm.
where Harriet Street is.
Okay,
A
yeah, I know
small
exactly where
a
it is.
small community. They were just working people, and most of my time was spent there.
Okay, all right. Um, I know in the black community, even when you say you're from Charleston, there's always you have to, you can pinpoint it a little bit more.
The
Like you
community,
said,
yeah,
like
yeah,
like Silver Hill.
yeah.
Like for example, um, I'm from Allendale. That's
Hmm.
the town. But within Allendale, I'm from the 10 Mile community, a
Yeah.
historically, black community.
Well, I remember that as the last area that we were in, but we moved around. Once lived on Union Heights. We once lived at 5 Mile.
Oh yeah.
Most of the times in the black community, you didn't have a name of a community. You had a number,
Right, you had a
like
number.
4 Mile,
Mm-hmm.
3 Mile,
Right, right, right.
and that type thing. So I was on Union Heights, 6 Mile,
Mm-hmm.
Silver Hill, and that like that.
Mm-hmm. What school did you attend when you were a kid?
Well, the elementary school was 4 Mile, and then from 4 Mile, that's the elementary part, and then from 4 Mile I graduated, and then I went to Burke. But going to Burke during my time, um, if you did not live in the city proper, that's the city of Charleston proper, there was no school that you could attend beyond the seventh grade for a black person,
Hmm.
unless you went to Avery, which was a private school, or you went to the Catholic school. But for public schools,
ICS.
you
Oh,
could uh, there,
Immaculate. Yeah.
there was no place to go.
Right.
I got to Burke by telling a lie that I lived in the city of Charleston, and I met a lady that lived at 127th. Um, what was that street? But she lived in the city of Charleston, and she allowed me then I visited her house, knowing that I had to go to high school, and asked her could I Congress Street. She's 127 Congress
Congress.
Street,
Yeah.
and she allowed me to use her address to go to school. However, the teachers then would be coming to the city to go to Burke, and they would wonder how they would see me on the highway walking to Burke School daily and saying that I lived at 127 Congress Street. If you went to Burke School today and got my record, you will see that my address, all the time that I went to high school, was 127 Congress Street.
I see.
And if I didn't do that, there was no other place for me to go
I see.
because I couldn't afford to go to the private schools.
Mm-hmm.
And I was not a part of the parochial school so that I can go to the Catholic school.
Mm-hmm.
So I got by telling that lie for all that time
Mm-hmm.
in order to get it because before, other than that, see, Burke was the only school that they had beyond the only high school that they had, and that school was designated for city residents.
Uh-huh.
People came from the islands, they lied.
Mm.
Um, all the kids that came from Johns Island, James Island, all those islands, all the blacks that came in, everybody went to Burke. That Burke was built in 1911, and prior to that, there was no place higher than the elementary school that you could go if you were black.
So now, jumping into that with the music part of your life, is it there that you started with music and started playing the
Yeah,
saxophone?
I started at Burke. Once I was allowed to attend school at Burke, Burke had a band. My
Very
grandfather,
good band.
yeah, my grandfather asked me, "What do you want for Christmas?" And I said, "I want a saxophone." The only thing I knew about a saxophone is that I would go to a place called Grant Park, and I would see the bands that would be coming through Charleston, and I saw a guy with a saxophone, and I said, "That's what I want to play." And my grandfather bought me a saxophone for Christmas. So I couldn't start at the beginning of the year, so I'd missed all that time. And Mr. Daniels, who was the band director, took me as a private student, and I studied with him until the end of the year. At the end of the year, um, the Jenkins Orphanage at that time, they were breaking
Mm.
up. And all the kids who came to Jenkins Orphanage from out of town, um, they changed the welfare system so that people who had children from Chicago that they sent to Charleston, those kids would go back home now because the welfare money followed them. Before the welfare money went to Jenkins Orphanage, and then the parents were kind of glad to get rid of their kids, and that's how
Wow.
I got with the Jenkins Orphanage group. The Jenkins Orphanage group then had started going back to their place of residence, and that gave us a chance then to play with the Jenkins Orphanage band, because we would have never made it other than that because those guys were super good. And so they start taking the kids from Burke and having them to work with the kids at the orphanage, and they use those kids as orphans. Um, I never spent a night in the orphanage.
Right.
I was not an orphan,
Right.
but I was so happy to be with the orphanage group.
Now, for our guests that are tuning in
Mm,
to this episode, just a quick
mm,
backstory. The Jenkins Orphanage Band um, was definitely one of the most well known for producing musicians that went on to become some of the most important, if not the important, pieces and musicians in some of the most well-known jazz orchestras of the day. They played in pit orchestras and in on Broadway. They did world tours, all from this little group of orphans here in Charleston, South Carolina. And like Mr. Hamilton said, the the education in that music class and those bands was so good and was such at a high level that people sent their kids there just for
mm,
those
yeah.
lessons, and so if you were in the mix with the Jenkins Orphanage band, then then you were doing something, because that was definitely one of the cradles of jazz, as I like to refer to it, just in jazz as a whole. When you talk about the beginnings of it, you really have to put Jenkins Orphan in the mix and in the middle of the whole starting of jazz conversation. Um, so wow. Now I heard, I don't know if it's a rumor or not. I've heard this story. It's almost folklore about you, but it's almost folklore. I heard a story, and let me tell the story first, the way that I heard it. Um, I heard that Lionel Hampton, the famous jazz vibraphonist and drummer, part of the, as people would say, aristocracy of jazz. I heard that Lionel Hampton offered you a place in his band on the spot. Is that true?
Um, Lionel came to Charleston.
It's true.
Yeah, it's true. Lionel came to Charleston and used to have the James Hotel on Spring Street. And I was 14 years old, I think, at that time, 14 or 15. And Lionel, somebody told Lionel about me. And Lionel sent for me and a guy by the name of Leon Jones. Leon played bass, and Lionel had both of us to play for him. And I played for Lionel, and Lionel said, "I want you in my band." He said, "I want you to meet me in Charlottesville, Virginia, Monday morning at 10 o'clock. And I was thrilled to death.
Hold on. Pause right there. Meet him in Charlottesville, Virginia, Monday morning. What day of the week is this?
This is a Friday evening. And he said Monday morning. So I ran home to my mama. And I told Mama, I said, "Mama, I'm going on the road. I'm going to play with Lionel Hampton."
Now, one other thing. At this point, Lionel Hampton is arguably one of the biggest names in jazz, in music, in the world at this point. He is like top, this is the top cream of the crop. This is, if you get that opportunity, then you have definitely arrived as a player. Yeah.
And he said, so I went home and I told my mother, and she said, she listened, and she said, "You're going to college."
Hmm.
And that was the end of that. Now, Lionel did hire Leon Jones. Leon left Charleston, made that trip to Charlottesville, met the band, and about 6 months later, I saw Leon playing with Lionel on the Today Show.
What?
Yeah. Um, my mother was smart, and she knew things that I never thought of. She didn't want me on the road because of the things that could happen to you.
Right.
I didn't know that. You get excited about going on the road. The funny thing about it, Lionel never told me who's going to pay for me to get to Charlottesville. He just told me to meet him there.
Yeah.
So she knew all that and understood all that. I never thought about anything like that. So I was watching television this morning, and Lionel is on. Leon Jones is playing with Lionel on the Today Show.
Yeah.
And I said to myself, I could be on that program. But about a month later, Leon Jones was found nude in the snow
Oh, I'm sorry. Wow.
from an overdose
Mm.
of drugs. He died.
Mm. Mom.
So Mom knew.
So now she mentioned know you're going to college.
That's what she said.
And what college did you go to?
I went to South Carolina State.
South Carolina
Yeah.
State. It's my
See,
alma mater as well. Yeah.
Mr. Daniels, who was my teacher, and the funny thing about it, Mr. Daniels was a trumpet player.
Hmm.
He knew nothing about the saxophone. He taught me to play the saxophone from from a book.
Hmm.
Just took a book and used the book and followed the instruction in the book
He's a good teacher.
and taught me to play saxophone.
Hmm.
However, he did the best he could with the knowledge that he had. Later, when I went to university and studied for a year with Henry Gulick, all the stuff that I was doing was wrong, almost. But I went back and I thought about the fact that he did the best he could with what he had,
Hmm.
you know.
Hmm. So you get to South Carolina State, and just a little bragging about South Carolina State, as that's my alma mater as well. South Carolina State, uh, and just the state of South Carolina, as I speak about it a lot, um, is known for their output of musicians and how they have gone out into the world and done tremendous things on stage, off stage, in performance, in music education, in education just in general. What was it like on campus during that time?
Well, it's a funny thing. I went to school, went to South Carolina State, and they gave me a scholarship to study, but I had to work to get my meals.
Mm.
And then I started playing with the band, and that helped me then to get meals.
Hmm.
And so that's how I made it there. If it had not, Mr. Daniels put me in his car and took me to South Carolina State, and they took me.
Hmm.
I had $100.
Hmm.
That was a whole lot of money.
Yeah,
then, yeah. And they took me, and for that full year, I was just glad to get out of Charleston, because it was a new life. I got there, and being in an environment like that, it was like being in a family.
Very much no.
On campus, everybody looked out for each other.
I know that well.
And
Yeah.
so you never had to worry once you got there
Hmm.
because you were looked after. And see, since they did not have entertainment on the weekend, we played in the band, and the band entertained the student body. Um, there's a place called Duke
Duke's
Gymnasium,
Gym.
and we'd go to
Still
Duke.
there,
Yeah,
Duke's Gym.
we'd go to Duke Gym,
Hmm.
and you never wanted to even go back home then,
Right, right.
Yeah,
It's right in the
yeah.
center of campus.
Right.
Yes, Duke's
Yeah.
Gym. So when you were at South Carolina State, you studied music education?
Yeah, I at the time they didn't have a major, but in music. So I thought about the fact that I had to make it in life. And you get out one day and start thinking about what's going to happen to you in the future. And so I took tailoring.
Tailoring.
Yeah,
Really?
I
I
used to
didn't know
love
that.
to sew.
I didn't
And
know that.
yeah, I took tailoring as a side job so that if I didn't make it as a teacher in music, um, I would be secured. I'd have something else that I could do.
Hmm.
And I used to love to sew. I sewed until I got married, and my wife wanted a new outfit every week, and it turned me against it. Yeah, yeah. So I stopped. In fact, I've got a sewing machine now at home.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I loved it.
Hmm.
But after that, I got to the place that I didn't want to be bothered with it. But
Uh-huh.
so I took the music then. Then I wanted to. After I graduated from state, I had to go into service. Everybody had to give his 2 years to the draft.
Hmm.
So I went in the draft, And I came back home, and I was still thinking about going on the road. And I
Mm.
went to the registrar. During those days you had the registrar, and they would be like a parent.
Right.
I knew the registrar, and she said to me, "What do you want to do now?" I said, "I want to go on the road, play with a band." She said, "And suppose that doesn't work?" I said, "Well, I don't know what I'll do then." She said, "I want you to do this." I said, "What?" She said, "I got a job for you." She said, "I want you to teach for 2 years. And if you teach for 2 years and you don't like it, then I want you to think about you can go on the road then."
Mm-hmm.
She sent me to a place called Union, South Carolina.
Union.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Upstate.
and they hired me. And I fell in love with teaching and the kids and playing, with them and all that. And I built a good program with nothing.
Was it a Union high school?
Union High School
Oh,
then, at that time, yeah.
yeah.
Union
Okay.
High School. No, Sims. I'm sorry, Sims High School
Sims High
in
School.
Union.
Okay.
Sims High School in Union. And I built a good program in the 2 years that I was there.
Mm-hmm.
I went to summer school, and the principal, John T. Wilson, was in summer school at that time. He was the principal at Barnes Wilson. And they were getting ready to open Barnes Wilson as a new school in the North area for black kids.
Mm-hmm.
And he asked me to come home. And I thought about it, and I had been in love with the kids in Union.
Mm-hmm.
It was difficult. But then I said, if I've got to move, I better do it now.
That's the time.
So I accepted the job, and I came to Barnes Wilson, and they didn't have money. Doing black people didn't have money during those days, and they gave me $1,300 to start a music program. 1,300, and I knew that that was nothing to start a music program. You have to buy an instrument and all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I took the $1,300 and I went to a place that had used instruments. I bought the heavy instrument like drums.
Right. Right. Yeah.
I bought a baritone sax,
Mm-hmm.
a sousaphone, and I started my program. And the kids had to get their own other instrument to do it. But I started my program,
Mm-hmm.
and the program started doing well because during those days, kids loved music.
Right.
And for some reason, I built a family away from a family.
Mm-hmm.
And it grew. And during the time that I stayed in the classroom, I taught 3,600 kids.
Mm.
I sent 130 something kids to college. Um, all kinds of things came out of the program, and from that program, a lot of things happened. Like I got into politics from that band because the kids in the band came to me complaining about the fact that they were in a community that had sewer running through an open ditch in their
Mm.
community, and they couldn't get anybody to close it. And so they came to me complaining about it and complaining about it. So something said to me, go to a community meeting and and see what's going on, because these kids are talking about it all the time. And so I went to community meeting, and when I when I went to that meeting, they talked about that ditch and that problem. And one of the guys in the meeting by the name of Henry Wright said, "Why don't we get Lonnie Hamilton to see what he can do to have that ditch closed?" And I'm saying, these people crazy. I'm sitting there, what can I do about closing a ditch? So they kept on and on and on. And then one day, a lady by the name of, oh God, I can't remember her name, but her husband was a minister. She was a teacher. She had an eighth grade class, and she sent for me one day. And they started talking about that ditch. I'm in the school, and she sent for me and said, can you help these kids? And I said, I will talk to people and see what can be done. So I went back to my classroom. I got another call to come to her classroom. She's an eighth grade social studies teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, the kids want to talk to you. The kids had taken up their lunch money, and it came to $23. There are 24 kids with $23 to give me as a campaign purse to go into politics.
Oh, really?
Now I know that I'm in trouble for the simple reason that what can you do with $23? So I cried in the classroom. And I went back to my classroom. And it bothered me. So, like a crazy man, I'm thinking, here you are. You've gone. You've sent all these kids to school.
Mm-hmm.
You've done all you could for them. You've got everything going for you as a band director. All these awards and all this
Mm-hmm.
stuff that
Mm-hmm.
the kids had won.
Mm-hmm.
The kids are known all over.
Mm-hmm.
Here are kids who are known like Alphonse
I like
Mazon.
Alphonse. I was going to
Alphonse
get to that.
Mazon
Yeah.
came to me beating on a tin can. I bought him his first stick.
Mm-hmm.
He never had a drum.
Mm-hmm. Hold on. Alphonse Mouzon, who we're talking about, is one of Mr. Hamilton's students. Alphonse played the drums, and he eventually went on to be one of the greatest jazz drummers in the world. He was the first call for people like Herbie Hancock, Wayne Shorter, Jaco Pastorius. He was the first drummer in the band, the very popular, revolutionary, really, first fusion band named Weather Report. And he is from North Charleston, South Carolina, and was one of Mr. Hamilton's students.
Well, he came to me beating on tin cans. I bought the first drum, gave him the first drum, and he went on to do well. And I'm thinking all these things. But I knew that something had to be done about these kids.
Mm-hmm.
So I told him, all right, I will run. I will get into politics to see what I can do about your problem. Not knowing that you should there was no teacher, white, black, or purple, in Charleston County that would get into politics.
Mm-hmm.
So for those kids, I went and got and put my name out there, not knowing what I was getting into. The next thing I knew, the superintendent of the school called me, said they wanted to talk to me. So I talked to the assistant superintendent and told him what I wanted to do. And he said, Lonnie, I can think of no other person in this town that would do what you want to do. Say, if that's what you want to do, we support you. That's the assistant superintendent. 2 weeks go by, and the same assistant superintendent called me and said, Lonnie, you know when you get into politics, you create enemies. I didn't know that, you know. You create enemies. And the school board has decided that you should not run for county council. And so I said, but you told me it was all right.
Mm-hmm.
He said, well, things have changed. And he said, the school board will meet Monday night, and they will make a decision as to what they're going to do about you. And I said, well, would you call me and let me know what decision they make? So Monday night they had the meeting. They decided in the school board that if I ran for county council, I would lose my job.
Mm.
So that night about 10 o'clock, the assistant superintendent called me, and I was in bed. And he said, the board met tonight, and the board has decided that if you run, you'd lose your job
Mm.
because you can't do both.
Hmm.
And I started crying. My wife said, what's wrong? I said, I was told that the board met, and if I run for county council, I'd lose my job. She said, well, if you want to run, you go on and run, and we'll eat because I'll be working. Now, she doesn't know that she worked for the same system that I'm working for.
Right.
She's a school teacher.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so I'm thinking, this woman don't understand what's going on. So, so I told the man, I said, would you give me a letter so that I can give to the people in Union Heights and let them know why I can't run for county council? So he said, 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, you come to the office and you'll get your letter. I went by. Sure enough, I got the letter. Now, I want you to understand that during those days, I was not allowed as a teacher to go through the front door of the office. You go through the back door to get into the office. And I got my letter, and I went to Judge Richard Fields, was the lawyer then.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked him, what do you do about a thing like this? He looked at the letter, and he said, well, I'm going to share this letter with Attorney Gedney Howe. Now, I don't know Gedney Howe. I don't know who he is. But he was a prominent lawyer here in Charleston. And he said, we'll get back to you. Later, they with the help of Gedney Howe and Richard Fields, they wrote a response to the letter that I received from the school board. And in that letter, they told the school board that they were infringing upon my civil rights, and that if they attempt to take my job away from me because I wanted to run for county council, they'll meet them in court. And so after that, the school board decided then not to protest this thing, and they allowed me to run.
So you run.
I ran and I won.
Of course you
Yeah.
won.
But I was not expected to win for the simple reason that during those days, 68% of the people then in Charleston County were white.
Mm-hmm.
And they figured that, see, my opponents were two white individuals. And they figured then that there was no chance for me to win the election running against two white individuals. Because in order to do that, I would have to come away with over 51% of the electorate.
Yeah.
And I ran. But since I had an integrated band, you understand, integration had already
yeah.
taken place at the school then. 70% of my kids were white. So I I had good relationship with my kids. My white kids sold me to their white parents.
Parents. Hmm.
I had one white man to come to me one day after we played a concert, and he said to me, after the concert, and how the concert came about, there was a white minister supporting me. He was trying to find out how to get other whites to see me as a potential person to run for office. And he decided to have a concert at his church. He integrated his church. My band is integrated, had me to bring the band over to play. And all this, he never told me what he was doing or why he did this. But then I realized after what he was doing. After the concert that night at his church, a white person came up to me and said, Hamilton, he says, I don't like niggers.
Mm.
He said, but I've never lied to my daughter. And I promised my daughter that I would vote for you. And he walked away.
Hmm. So you win the election.
Yeah, I
And
won the election, and I won with over 50% of the electorates, which meant that I didn't have to have a runoff.
hmm hmm
Now, now my opponent is, see, I won the Democratic
right, yeah. So now
Party.
you have to
Yeah,
run the yeah.
now I would have to have the Republican Party would put up their candidate. The Republican Party put up their candidate. And the funny thing about it, after they put up their candidate, um, one day I came out of the shopping center, and all the cars in the parking lot in the shopping center had my picture there, saying that I was running against
hmm
this white person, and you could see nothing but my teeth and my eyes, black as could be.
Hmm.
But everything they did, they were not successful. That night when you had because my kids, my white kids, formed a committee
Hmm.
supporting me, and they would go to, there were white people who were helping. They would go to various offices, and we have telephone banks during those days. My white kids would call white people.
hmm
My black kids would call black people. They would tell them about this wonderful person they had as their teacher. And that night, when the final election was held, I was I was ahead, but Al's Palm was still coming in.
hmm
That box had not reported yet. When Al's Palm came in, because my white kids were out there pushing in Al's Palm, I carried Al's Palm.
hmm
And as a result of that, I won the election.
So now, fast forward. What year was that?
That's in 1970.
And you remained as on county council
For 24 years.
for 24
Yeah.
years. Now, there's so many things um, that you accomplished for the betterment of the county, for the Low Country. Um, if anyone is driving in or out of town, uh, and you are on Interstate 26 and you get to Interstate 526, you probably see a large sign that says the Lonnie Hamilton III Exchange. That gentleman. If you are driving on Leeds Avenue off of Interstate 526, and you see a large building, it's the county building, correct?
County office
The
building.
county office building, which is aptly named Lonnie Hamilton III County Building. Um, his record in what he has done for the service of the Low Country is unmatched. Um, and I, I mean, we could run rings and talk for hours about all of the various things. Um, Eventually, you got out of teaching at the public school, but you went into another form of teaching, correct?
See, when I got into politics, um, the superintendent realized then that I could be of value to them, to the system. At first, they were afraid that when I went into politics, I went integrated to school. Here's the part. When integrated schools in Charleston County, the superintendent had already decided that white people would not accept me to teach their children. So they offered me 3 vice principal positions.
Hmm.
Um, sort of, see, because I would not be good in the classroom if it were integrated.
I see.
However, um, they didn't know because when they made the decision to put me as a vice principal, um, the white people then went to the superintendent and told the superintendent they wanted me to stay in the classroom. So I got a call from the superintendent's office saying, Lonnie, they want you to stay. They want you in the classroom to teach. And he was elated over the idea. I said, who do you mean, the white people? He said, yes. I said, well, have you told them about my philosophy when it comes to discipline? He said, no, we didn't discuss that. I said, well, you better have a meeting with the parents so that we can discuss that.
Hmm.
And at this meeting, they called the meeting. At this meeting, only white people came. And we had a good meeting, very good meeting. And at the end of the meeting, they decided that I could stay in the classroom. But I had to change my idea about discipline. You see, when I first started, I would paddle my kids.
They had that for
Yeah,
a while. That
yeah.
was the way
That was
that
the
was
way
the
that
way.
I
Back
would
then.
paddle my kids, and it got to the place that they would force me to paddle. You know, I they would get in trouble, and they'd come to me and say, "I did this wrong. You paddle me." Then I got to the place that the paddle was just an idea. Didn't have to paddle anymore.
Hmm.
We had everything organized to the extent that the kids ran everything. If you got into trouble, you were in serious trouble with the
Right.
kids.
Right. Right.
And all I did sat back,
Hmm.
and be daddy.
I was gonna get to that actually because um, I know just as someone that was in the classroom, I still maintain a good relationship with my former students
Well,
and some
yeah,
of their
yeah.
parents.
I was daddy.
Yeah, and a lot of them look up to you as a father figure.
I had a young boy named Folks to write me a 3-page letter, white boy, and say that I was the only father figure that he's ever known.
Mm.
He was down off Buford in one of the service.
Mm-hmm.
Wrote me a 3-page letter
Mm.
saying that I was a father figure. There is a there is a judge right now in Charleston County who look at me like a father
Mm-hmm.
because his mother told him, "You listen to Mr. Hamilton. She's white. Today, that relation is still there.
Mhm.
And that's the kind of relation that I built with my children.
Mhm.
And that kept me going. And it encouraged me to do a lot of things to make their lives better.
Mhm. So you are in the classroom. You are county councilman. You are leading Lonnie Hamilton and the Diplomats,
Yeah.
which I'd like to
Yeah.
chat just for just a quick second. Lonnie Hamilton and the Diplomats, the premier musical group in town. You had a long-standing residency um, at Henry's, which is still open in the market area.
Mm.
Um, and I just need clarification for me. Did you partly own Henry's?
No, no,
Okay,
no.
I've heard that
Well,
sometimes.
it got that way, because I stayed at Henry's from 1987 until 1996. I stayed at Henry's 9 consecutive years.
Every Friday and Saturday night.
Every weekend
Mm-hmm.
at Henry's. Anybody that was somebody, they came to Henry's. And so as a result of that, um, the 9 year experience that I had there and the relationship that I built, you go to Henry's today, you see my picture all over the place, And,
Right.
and I left there in 1996.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it would give people an idea that I had something in there. But see, prior to Henry's, there was Lonnie's.
What?
Lonnie's was at, I think, 102 Market Street. Lonnie's did not last long, but it was a beautiful club, and what happened to us? Personality clash caused us not to make it successful. But having started Lonnie's, where people would line up to
Mm-hmm.
come to Lonnie's,
Mm-hmm.
and my clientele, I went down there with the boys who were my partners
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because I felt that, you see, black folk were not accepted from Calhoun Street down.
Oh.
You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean?
Mm-hmm.
Nothing happened from Calhoun Street down to Broad in that area.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I was approached about doing Lonnie's, I figured then this would be a golden opportunity to get together with some white boys
Mm-hmm.
and to go into business.
Mm-hmm.
But it didn't work that well because I got to be popular. My name was on the building. My name was on the lease. My name was on the liquor license. And people are coming. And people are saying to me, I don't like your white partners.
Mm.
And I'm saying, God, if I had known this, I could have done this thing by myself. But as it happened, we had personality clash, and Lonnie's closed. But Lonnie's open, and Lonnie's is right where Planners is now on Market Street.
Oh, that's right on the corner.
Right back
Kinda.
in that in that
Yeah.
area,
Yeah.
back in there was Lonnie's, a beautiful place. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, we spent a lot of money in decoration and stuff like that, and it went well for a while, but it couldn't last.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned a lot of lessons from it.
Mm-hmm.
But what happened? My following from Lonnie's went to Henry's.
Ah, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You understand?
Right.
So when I got to Henry's, and I had a good group of people to work with,
Mm-hmm.
no trouble, no drinking and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
All they wanted to do have fun playing music.
Right.
And so for the 9 years that we stayed there, we built a good reputation.
Mm-hmm.
The owners then liked us, and in return, they put my picture all over the place.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, one last thing
Mhm.
that I wanna that I wanna just a quick put a bow on it. Um, Recently, the city of Charleston went over to France, correct?
Right.
And the Mayor Tecklenburg, took a few people in order to be ambassadors, and you were one of those folks that went over. Could you just briefly, talk about that experience? About
There's a little town in France called Flares. Um, they are twin cities, sister cities to
Charleston?
Charleston, and they exchange trips. You would take some of the things that happen in Charleston to France, and they would bring things from France here. And the mayor thought it would be a good idea when you start taking things to take some of Charleston music there.
Mm-hmm.
And so he he offered them to have some of the musicians from Charleston to come over, and I was one of the individuals that he selected, and we went to Flares, and we played.
Swinging.
We played. we played for we played for them in Flares. We visited the schools. They had us to talk with the kids. Since I don't speak French, they gave me an interpreter, and my interpreter would be with me all the time that I was there. I was there 9 days. And we would go to the schools, go to the businesses, and just got a chance to spread the idea about Charleston. He also took the barbecue man.
Rodney?
Rodney.
Yeah, Rodney Scott.
He
Yeah.
took Rodney there because they wanted to give them the idea of Rodney's barbecue.
Right.
And so Rodney barbecued a whole, and we went
Yeah.
and we went to the fair,
Mm-hmm.
and we got a chance then to spread the idea
Right.
and the joy about Charleston.
Right.
And we had a good time, very good time. They gave me the French flag
Mm-hmm.
to bring back. I've got a French flag at home now as a result of that. And it was a good idea by the mayor to just do good friendship because, see, the officer from Charleston during the World War,
Mm-hmm.
they saved Flares.
Ah. Mm-hmm.
The Germans were getting ready to take that area, and they went in there and saved it, and that's what caused them then to have a good relationship.
Well, Brother Hamilton, I could sit here and listen to all of this for hours. Maybe we'll have to bring you back, because I still haven't even asked you about like weren't you the last band director for Jenkins Orphanage or something like that?
No, I was not a band director for Jenkins
Or
Orphanage.
you
I,
worked?
I played. When I was in high school.
See, I need clarification
Yeah,
on all
yeah.
of that.
When I was in high school, I traveled with the Jenkins Orphanage. We would go to New York, and we would play on the. We were not allowed to play on the streets in New York City, so we go to Tasley, Virginia, and then we'll go up into Poughkeepsie, New York.
Mm-hmm.
We could play on the streets there. So we'd play on the streets in Poughkeepsie, and people would pass the hat,
Mm-hmm.
and that money would go to the orphanage.
Mm-hmm.
On the way back home, we'd work up into New York. We'll stop in Tasley, Virginia. We'd play for the fair, and they'll have all kinds of activities from the fair. We would do our performance. People would come and listen to the music. They would contribute money. That money would go to the orphanage, and it'll happen just before. Would happen just before Labor Day.
Mm-hmm.
Labor Day, you'll come back to Somerville, play your last concert, and then you go to school.
I've got to find a way to get you back on another episode. We should chop this up into in the parts and just do a bunch like that. But sir, as always, it's always a pleasure just to chat with you. And like I said, just to hear the knowledge that you have about this area and all of the things that you've done and accomplished and seen and have talked with people and people that you've met and that have met you and things. It's just an amazing body of work over your lifetime. Still young, you're still running around, you're still playing. 93 is young right now. Wow, that's amazing. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you being here, sir, really.
Pleasure's all mine.
And thank you all very much, and we'll see you at the next one.